Okay, good morning, everyone. So thank you for your patience. We're now ready to start the webinar. So welcome to the first session of our webinars for the Elements of AI series in Luxembourg. So today we'll just have a short opening session. So let's just have a bit of a look at what we'll talk about today. So we'll start with a short presentation of us, the hosts. Then we'll go a bit over the Elements of AI course. And then we'll talk a bit about the schedule for the rest of the webinars and then the different speakers that we will have. We'll also talk a bit about how to get in touch with us and how to start some discussions between the participants of the course. And then we'll also talk about the important point of how to get actually your course certificate for the completion of the course. And then if you have any questions, don't worry. So you can already type them now in the chat. We will save them for later, but we will only answer them at the end of the session. So a couple of words about us. So I'm Dr. Jeremy Dauphin. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Luxembourg. And so together with me, we have Professor Martin Theobald, who is a professor at the University of Luxembourg. And he has now a couple of words to say.
Yes, hello. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I think in the chat some people have no sound or the camera upside down. I don't know how to switch the camera though. For us it was okay. I'm sorry about that then. Anyway, I just wanted to say hello. So very warm welcome. I hope you can hear me now as well. And from my side, so I'm Martin Theobald. I'm your academic advisor for the course for the upcoming 6 weeks or so. From the University of Luxembourg side, so this is organized together with the Competence Center and SMC and Script, and brought to you here via the Elements of AI website. So we are very pleased to have more than 1,000 registrations on the Elements of AI.lu website, which includes, I think, more than 350 people from ENAP, more than 200 students from the university, and more than 150 teachers also from the various high schools here in Luxembourg, which is very nice. So I think I'm a professor for nearly 10 years, but I never had a class that came nearly close to this size. So that's only possible via an online event, I think. And that's, of course, also then, I think, an appropriate mode for the current COVID situation that we still have, of course. So again, very special thanks to SMC and to Script for supporting us as well here. I also wanted to thank the Competence Center, Anne Oberle and Pierre de la Serre, for facilitating all of this, for helping us with the technical stuff, and also great thanks to the Dean's Office that also facilitates this course and brings it to you via online teaching. All right, I think that's all I can say, so I'm giving the word to Jeremy.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's continue a bit with our overview of the course. So let's say some words about the Elements of AI course itself. So it's a massive online open course that was created in 2018 by the Finnish company Reactor in collaboration with the University of Helsinki. So the goal when they designed the course was to demystify artificial intelligence and helping really the general public, so even non-experts, understand what AI is, what it can do, what it cannot do, some misconceptions that we have. So we try to really understand better what artificial intelligence is. So the course is really designed for a very broad audience. So we don't have any complex formulas. There's no need to worry about that. But we still want to tackle some high-level concepts to allow you to understand really what is happening with many examples and practical exercises. So the aim of when they created the course was to educate 1% of the European citizens about the basics of AI. And so far, they have more than 600,000 registered users across all versions of the platform, and more than 75,000 users have successfully completed the course. So the course is also available in 9 different languages, and they are working on getting more languages available. It was also ranked #1 AI course. So one of the #1 AI course on Class Central and Forbes, alongside with other courses, such as the one from Stanford and Google. So we're very happy to be able to present such a course for the Luxembourgish audience. So we made a couple adjustments in order to bring it for the audience in Luxembourg. So as Martin said a bit earlier, this course was made possible by the Luxembourgish government in collaboration with the SMC, the ENAP, the Script, the University of Luxembourg, and the Competence Center. So there's really a lot of people behind it, and it's a great effort that we are making here. So the course itself is divided in 6 different chapters, which we recommend to follow in a paced format. But so in theory, you can also follow the course at your own pace. So we present the course in English here in Luxembourg. Unfortunately, the Luxembourgish version of the course is not ready. We might be able in the future, depending on the demand, to maybe work on it. But for now, we have decided to go with English because also we have some presence from guest researchers from the University of Luxembourg, where the main language of communication is English. So we have a 6-week program, which started on Monday of this week. So I think many of you have already started working on the content and the course, and have maybe already finished the first chapter. So we recommend to follow the paced version of the course, where you do 1 chapter every week, and this will also go along with the webinars that we have once a week. So this is the first of the 6 webinars that we will have. Each of these will last 1 hour. And starting from next week, we will have every time a guest researcher from the University of Luxembourg who will talk a bit about their own vision on AI and their personal research and projects that they're conducting in Luxembourg. So also at the end of every webinar, we'll conduct a question and answer session. So if you have any questions regarding the content of the course, or maybe if you want to go a bit beyond, then feel free to save them for the webinars, and then we can discuss them at the end. So at the end of the 6 weeks, we'll also have a final exam, which will then allow you to have a certificate of completion from a Luxembourgish entity, which will be much easier to get recognized by your employer or your university. So I think most of you are already aware, but the reading material for the course is available online on the URL eofai.lu. So in case you need any additional resources, we also have the Reddit page, and I think many of you are already there. But we will always post the slides for the webinars. We will also record them. So in case you cannot attend the live session of the webinar, you can also check out the recording afterwards. And this will all happen on our Reddit page. So we also have a short URL for the Reddit page, eofai.lu/Reddit. Maybe someone can also post the link in the chat to make it easier for other people to click the link. And so if you have additional questions that we won't have time to answer in the webinars, because we only have only so much time in the webinars, then you can also always feel free to ask them on the Reddit page, and to also start some discussions if you maybe have some points or some ideas that you got while going through the course. And I'll talk a little bit more about Reddit also again in a few minutes. So let's talk a bit about the content of the course. So maybe first I would like to note that the course is available so on the browser, on any desktop machine, but there's also a mobile-friendly version if you access it from your phone. So for example, if you have a long commute to work, you can also make a bit of progress on the course during this time. So the course is divided into 6 chapters, and let's have a quick look at each of the chapters and what topics they cover. So in the first chapter, we look at what is AI. So the first problem would be to find a good definition for what is AI. So in particular, the term artificial might be a little bit more clear as to what it means, but the term intelligence is actually a little bit more vague and ambiguous. So we look at some existing definitions, maybe some potential problems with these definitions, and then we also try to find some definitions of our own in the course. I think many of you have already tackled a bit this chapter. But then we also look at the fields that are related to AI. So in particular, the field of machine learning, which is actually not just related, but it's a subfield of AI. And then we also look at, for example, data science, which uses a lot of AI, but also combines it with statistical methods and a lot of understanding also of the field of application of where you actually apply the data science. And also, I think one very good example is robotics, where we use a lot of artificial intelligence, but there we also have many other challenges, such as mechanical engineering and electronical engineering, in order to actually build the robots, the materials that constitute them. And then we also think about some philosophical considerations. So what is actually intelligence? At which point can we qualify a process as or a system as being intelligent? And we have a look at some thought experiments, which try to question a bit our conceptions of what does it mean to be intelligent. So then in the second chapter, we go a bit more to practical approaches, and then the first one is using AI to solve problems. So we look at the first technique of searching. So in limited or let's say our environments that we can simulate, it's often quite easy to find an algorithm which can list all the possible solutions, but then the challenge really is to find the best one. So for example, for a GPS, it's quite easy to design an algorithm which just lists all possible routes that take you from your home to your workplace. But the real challenge is finding the one which gets you there the fastest. And so there you have a look at some of the techniques that I use, and also a bit how these techniques have evolved throughout history. Then we also look a bit at game theory. So in the course, we'll have the short example with the tic-tac-toe game, which is very simple. And there you can also directly work a bit with the game and try to see how it works in practice. But so if you've been following a bit the news on AI, I think you've heard about the famous examples with chess and Go, where the AI systems were able to beat even some of the best professional players. And I think also recently in some competitive video games, we have been able to design some AIs which were able to beat the best players in the world. So then in the next chapter, we move a bit away from AI interacting in these kind of limited simulated environments and trying to apply some techniques which work in the real world. So in this chapter, we look mostly at probabilistic reasoning methods. So in the real world, the challenge is that you don't necessarily have a perfect view on the world. So in a game of chess, if you just look at the board, then you have all of the information that you need. But in the real world, you have a lot of uncertainty. You have also maybe some information which is hidden on purpose from you, but you still want to be able to make sensible decisions. And so we look a bit at the Bayes rule and how it allows you to parse still partial knowledge in a sensible manner. And then we look at the practical applications, so the naive Bayes classification method. with examples of how to use it for spam filters and weather prediction. So then in the fourth chapter, we dive into the machine learning methods. And we have a look at the 3 different types of machine learning. So we have the supervised method, where we feed data into the system for it to learn, along with information on how we want the machine to interpret the data that we feed into it. Then on the other hand, we have the other type, which is the unsupervised learning, where we do not tell the machine exactly what we want, because sometimes also the user himself can't really say what they're expecting. So this is in particular useful when we want to pre-process large amounts of data, or we want to find hidden clusters in data so that we can group, for example, millions of users in groups of similar behaviors. And then the last type of machine learning is reinforcement learning, where we let the artificial intelligence system explore its environment, and then we give rewards when it does what we want it to do. So, for example, you can see a robot navigating in an unknown environment, and then when he finds something interesting, or he manages to successfully overcome an obstacle, then we can give him a reward. And this allows the robot to learn how to successfully complete the tasks that we want him to. Then we have a look at the nearest neighbor classifier. So there we want to assign some labels to specific data. For example, this is used in recommendation systems. So let's say, for example, when you have your favorite music application, and it can recommend some new songs to you, depending on whether other people who have a similar profile to yours also like the song or not. And then we also look at the regression method. And so this is used more when, so in the nearest neighbor method, we try to assign labels. So we want the machine to say yes or no. So for example, whether you will like a certain song or not. But for regression, this is more used when tasks expect an output, which is more of a number. So for example, when we want to predict the cost of an apartment or house in Luxembourg, which I think is quite a big question for everyone, a lot of people. So then in the 5th chapter, we have a look at the famous neural networks. So we look a bit at the basics. Neural networks were designed to try to simulate a human brain inside of a computer. So we first have a look at actually the components of a human brain and how they are translated into components inside of a computer. And then we look also at some advanced neural network techniques, in particular the famous deep learning method that I think many of you have heard about. We also look at maybe some a bit lesser known techniques such as convolutional neural networks, CNNs, for image processing, where you decompose an image into smaller windows that you then process in smaller batches. And then also the generative adversarial neural networks, the GANs, where you pit 2 different machine learning algorithms against each other in order to improve the both of them. And a famous example of this is where researchers were able to generate fake faces of celebrities. So for example, this face here on the slide, it looks like a famous celebrity, but I don't think anyone could tell who it is, because actually this person does not exist. So this face was completely generated by a computer, even though it looks very realistic. And so in the last chapter of the course, we look a bit beyond all the techniques and at the implications, so what it means for the future, and also how to manage expectations against reality. So I think a lot of you might also like to follow some sci-fi series and movies and literature. And so this might make it a bit hard to tell the difference between what is actually already possible, what is completely fictional, and what is maybe coming in the near future. So also we look at some implications that it has on society in terms of ethics and privacy concerns. So a couple of years ago, we had the GDPR that was introduced in Europe in order to protect the privacy of the users so that you can navigate the internet and use all of the many apps without necessarily giving up too much of your private data. And then we also have a sort of short summary of the course itself, and then how to also use the knowledge that you get from the course in for your job, for your everyday life, and what to do with it after completing the course. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the webinars. So during each of the webinar, we'll have an invited guest, researcher from the University of Luxembourg. And so our first guest for the webinar of next week will be Dr. Sana Nousri. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Luxembourg. She works in the AI RoboLab, and her research focuses on multi-agent systems. So she has quite a lot of interest and projects going on with AI and art, and she's always interested in dissemination of knowledge. So in her talk, she will give you again an introduction to AI from her point of view. She will talk a bit about AI and art and problem solving in general. Then our second guest will be Dr. Alexander Steen. So he's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Luxembourg. He works in the ICR research group. His research focuses on the theory and practice of higher order reasoning. And so in his talk, he will talk a bit more about logic in AI, automated theorem provers, and then how to apply them in society. So then our third guest will be Professor Luis Leiva. So he's a professor of computer science at the University of Luxembourg, and his research focuses more on machine learning and human-computer interactions. So in his talk on March 18, he will talk about information retrieval and implicit interaction. So he will focus a bit more on how to use implicit user input. So for example, not just the text that you directly type into a search bar, but also the pattern with which you type the text, or the movement of your mouse, or some extra information that can be used in order to give you more accurate results without necessarily having to ask you too many extra questions. Okay, and then our fourth guest will be Professor Martin Theobald, the co-host of the webinars. So I already introduced him earlier. And in his talk on March 25, he will talk about current trends and topics in big data analytics. So we'll talk a bit about the advantages of working with very large amount of data, but also the challenges that come when working with these very large amounts of data. And then for our last webinar, we will have a very distinguished guest, Professor Dov Gabay. So he's one of the world's most active and influential researchers in logic and reasoning. He has over 550 research papers published in peer-reviewed AI conferences. And he's editor of over 50 handbooks of logic and reasoning. He's really quite a prominent figure in the field of AI. And so in his talk, he will talk about formal logic, human intelligence, artificial intelligence, and fake intelligence. So I'm quite excited to hear what he'll say. Okay, so then a bit more again on how to get in touch with us. So our main point of contact will be our Reddit page. So we have here the link again, eofai.lu/Reddit. So if you're not familiar with Reddit, anyone can go on the page and read the content. But if you want to make a post or participate, you can also make an account for free. So very soon we'll also post the full schedule of the webinars, just as we talked about, but also with a bit more detail. And then after the webinars, we'll also post the recordings on the Reddit page. Also, if you have any questions that you would like to be answered during the webinars, you can also ask them a bit before the webinar. So every week I will make a post before the webinar, so you can post your questions there, and then we will try to answer them during the webinar as well. On top of the Reddit, we also have an FAQ page. So in particular for some technical issues, you can try to have a look at the FAQ, and then maybe you can already find an answer to your question there. So now let's talk a bit about how to get an official certificate of completion for the course. So we have actually two requirements that you need. So on the one hand, you will have a continuous assessment throughout the course, and then at the end, you will also have a final exam. So the continuous assessment works in this way. So you have throughout the course content on the Elements of AI platform, you will have regular practical exercises. These are automatically graded, so most of them are multiple choice questions. So just know that some of the questions are subjective, so they're just there to make you think a bit about some questions, but there is no right or wrong answer. So these questions will also say that even if you get the answer wrong, you will not be penalized for it. There's also a couple essay-based questions. So when I say essay-based, you do not need to write entire pages of dissertations. You just have to write maybe a couple paragraphs about a given question. So these are peer-reviewed, so that also after you have submitted your answer to the question, you will be presented with the answers of some of the fellow participants. So in order for you to complete the question, you also have to peer review 3 answers from other participants. It's quite important to do that, because otherwise you will not be counted as having completed the question. And so there you simply have to say whether you think the answer is relevant, if it was well written, if it was pertinent to the question. So this is also moderated, so that even if you write a good answer, but for some reason it is marked as spam by some other participants, we can still have a look at it and then validate it, even if it's wrongfully marked by other participants. So then at the end of the course, you will get a certificate from the Elements of AI platform. So to get this certificate, you will have to complete 23 out of the 25 exercises, and you just need to have 50% of them correct. So also know that the essay-based questions, you don't get a grade on them. So if it gets approved, if the answer gets approved, you simply get full points on the question. So then we also organize final exam. This will be conducted via Moodle. So we'll send you a link to the Moodle page when it is ready. We'll also post more information about this on Reddit when it's ready. So the final exam will be available starting only from the end of the course, so from April 5, and then you will have 2 weeks to complete the exam, so until around April 18. There will be about 30 multiple choice questions that you will have to answer online on the Moodle platform. So these will be based on written material of the online course. So we'll not ask any questions about the content of the webinar talks. Yes. So an example question, for example, is this one. What is the formula for Bayes' rule? So it is something you will see in the third chapter of the course. And so, as you can see from the example answers, this is as far as complexity of mathematical formulas will go. So it's not too bad. So the exam itself should not take too long. It's just 30 multiple choice questions. It's not because you have 2 weeks to do it that it will take 2 weeks to do. It's just to give you a lot of time to do it in case you have other obligations. So then once you have the certificate from the Elements of AI platform that you have completed all the exercises, and once you have passed the final exam on the Moodle platform, we'll just ask you to submit your certificate of completion of the exercises on the Moodle platform. We'll post a link and some instructions on the platform itself. And then we'll be able to issue you a final certificate of completion of the course from the Competence Center themselves. So this will allow you to get some credits for the university normally, or also for your employer to be able to claim, I think, some work hours. So this is done 100% online. So there is no specific date or place where you need to go to pass an exam. Everything is done online. Maybe also a short reminder for the participants coming from INAP. Participation to the webinars is mandatory as a requirement from the INAP themselves. So in order for your employer to recognize the certificate, you will also need to attend all of the webinars. So also it would be easier for us if you use the same email to participate in webinars for the Elements of AI platform, and then also when you do the exam on Moodle. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. That's it for me. Now we have some time for questions. I also put a recap of the useful links that I presented in the talk. So we can now move, if the moderators can now move us to the Q&A session. Okay, so we have a question asking, is there no Luxembourgish or German course? So there is a German version of the course that exists.
Yeah, so maybe we can stay a little longer also for the chat or answering chat questions. I think for us it's easiest to just verbally answer the chat questions directly. So to summarize, maybe again, it's really a very basic AI course. So you don't need any prior knowledge in math or background in math or in computer science or these kinds of things. It's really a very broad course that is supposed to make you think a little bit about AI, about the different areas within AI and what implications this may have. Now, basically, we're offering also these webinars as an additional service to you. We were asked to do this, and I think it's a nice idea to also have speakers from within the university and a few speakers, external speakers here, like Dov Gabay, who's really very well known in his field, extremely highly reputation as a logic person, for example, here, who's trying to tell you more and give you more background than about these aspects in an understandable manner, I suppose, right? And then the third thing that we were asked to do is to also organize a final exam. This is a basic requirement by the Competence Center as well to issue certificates. But also here, it's a very basic exam that is more or less there for completeness, let's say. So you don't have to worry about our final written exam. The main workload for you is clearly following the online course within the next 6 weeks. There you can actually also set your own pace. You can do things faster or a little bit slower and then basically complete the online course. You will get a certificate also from Reactor, from the company behind the online course. and then additionally get a Luxembourgish certificate from the competence center that is issued by the competence center and signed by the dean of the university as a certificate of completion and a result of your participation in the course from the Luxembourgish side, right? So this is the main idea behind organizing it like this. And it's of course the first run for us. So it's the first time we're organizing this now here in Luxembourg in combination with the university and the competence center. So we hope to continue this in the following years, of course, as well. And I guess we will also learn a few things ourselves on how to organize this from a technical perspective, what to present how, and what works well, what might not work so well in the end, and these kinds of things. Yes. So especially I know that for people from ENAP looking at the chat now, I know it's mandatory to also attend the webinars because it's part of their qualification. And there we would ask you to log in individually using the email address and the full name to which also the certificate should then be in the end issued. That would be the easiest thing for us. Otherwise there will be a few hundred participants in the webinars. It will be difficult for us to assign and to do the mapping between the webinar participants and the certificate names and these kinds of things, you know. Yes, the exercises can be repeated, but you have to fulfill every chapter basically to move on to the next chapter. Well, you get feedback, right? If something is wrong, we can reset you. This is fine.
So regarding the attendance to the webinars, it's only for the people from ENAP. And also the way we communicate it is that we will just send the ENAP a list of the
attendance. How do we prove? So we can, so the webinars are recorded. I think Pierre is also checking the names. So it's definitely better if you log in with your actual name. If you need to attend the webinars, if you're required to do so, the easiest thing for us is via your full name. And then we can do the mapping easier.
But normally from your side, you do not need to do anything. So we will take care of telling the organization who attended the webinars.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we upload it to YouTube. That's probably too broad, maybe in the end. For now, I would suggest to leave it with the Reddit. Everything is recorded, is put online via Reddit for the registered participants. For a different audience or different purpose, we might provide more general upload formats. Yes, each session is recorded, so including this one. The webinars are generally recorded and the talks will be recorded. That's available anytime for you. So you can be completely asynchronous in some sense in following the course. You can put your own pace. We just basically additionally provide this as a service to you to have these webinars. We can also answer questions regarding the actual course during the webinars. And then it's a car crash covered. That's a good question. Oh, individual confirmations. I don't know how easy that is to organize. If Pierre can do this, to send you a confirmation of your participation. Is that required for? Yeah, I mean, for today, it's certainly no problem, but maybe we check back with Pierre how we can really do the verify the attendance of the webinars for the different participants. And that is something we need to clarify. That's still.
So Moodle is the website where we'll hold the final exam. So we will also, it's not ready yet.
If you don't attend the webinar, the intention is to attend the webinars. If you're working with ENAP or so, I think you are free to do so during your working time. Then this is clearly the better solution. Otherwise, we need to find an individual agreement.
Do you not hear me, Martin? Okay, I think we have maybe some sound issues on his side.
You clicked on the link in the mail. Did you explain what Moodle is? Aha, that's the main question. So Moodle is an online learning platform by which we also use to organize the final exam. So we will basically provide the final exam with an additional link to this Moodle platform, which is hosted by the Competence Center. And then you can basically log in there via your email, and then also basically fulfill the exam or fill in the exam questions, which is a set of multiple choice questions that you then need to provide. Yes, indeed. I don't hear Jeremy. Oh, do I talk in the same time as Jeremy? These are the minor technical points.
Yes, I guess we have a little bit of technical issues there. We'll
maybe
try to solve it for
Jeremy
next
can take
time.
over.
Okay, so we have the question, do we have to register for every weekly course individually? So I'm not sure by course if you mean the webinars or the online content itself. But on the Elements of AI platform, you just have to register once, and then you can follow all the content with that one registration. But for the webinars, so at the end of each webinar, we'll also send you by email a link for the next webinar to which you can register. We will also put the full schedule of the webinars with links for each of them so that you can already even register in advance for every session. Is the submission of the answers from the exercises fixed? So the exercises on the Elements of AI platform, this is normally fixed. So you only need about 50% to pass the course. So normally you should be able to do this because, for example, the essay-based questions just give you full grades as long as your answer gets accepted. And then also the questions are not really too tricky. So as long as you properly read and understand the material, it should not be too hard. But in the worst case, we can still, so we can reset your whole progress on the exercises. We cannot do this question by question. That's the only thing. And then for the final exam, on the other hand, you will just have one try. That's a very good question. So Michael is asking if there's a thematic link between the chapters and the webinars. So the main idea is that we kind of do them in parallel more than together, so that even if you didn't read the chapters because you didn't have time, or if you're a bit behind on the material, you're still very welcome to attend the webinars. And also the topics discussed will be somewhat related, but not always, so that you can just do both more or less at your own pace. What will be kind of synchronous is the question-answer session at the end of webinars. So there we will try to favor questions which are related to the content of the chapter of the same week. But aside from this, there's no other requirement on the synchronous between the chapters and the webinar. We have a question on the time slot of the webinar. So yes, just to keep things simple, it will always be on Thursdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. every week. Is the final test online and in English? So yes. So as I said, so since the course content is all in English, also the final test will be in English. And as Martin said, the final test will be a bit more of a formality. So normally, if you have finished all the online material on the Elements of AI platform, you do not need to study for a whole week to just pass the exam. The questions should be more or less obvious once you have finished the content. And yes, it will be 100% online. And so it will be open for 2 weeks. You can take the final test whenever you want during those 2 weeks, and it's completely online. So you do not need to be physically present anywhere. Very good question. Is it already too late for new people to register? No, not at all. So if you still register this week, you can even still follow the PACE format without too much of a distance. But maybe so if you want to advise some of your friends or coworkers to also follow the course, it might be a bit better to then take the option when they register for the course of taking the course at their own pace, so that they can catch up on the content and then be maybe a bit more up to date with the rest of the participants. But for sure, so in principle, it's never too late to take the course, yeah. Now we have a bit more of a technical question. If we can briefly explain the difference between machine learning, deep learning, and AI. So first we have kind of a hierarchy between these 3 terms. So AI is really let's say the global field, so of research that's englobes so not only machine learning but also some other techniques such as formal logic and knowledge representation and reasoning, and many other techniques than just machine learning. Although machine learning is probably the most famous one. And then we have machine learning, which is a method of doing artificial intelligence. And so machine learning works by just taking a lot of data and then feeding it into an algorithm that will try to find a solution to how to process future data in a way that is also coherent with all the data that it has seen before. And then we have deep learning, which is a sub-technique of machine learning. And so deep learning is actually a neural network technique where you use multiple layers of neural networks in order to get a little bit more refined results on the learning. So there you will also see a bit more about deep learning in the chapter of neural networks. I think if you haven't seen neural networks, it's a bit hard to explain the specifics of deep learning. Yeah.
I think it's a very nice question, if I may comment on that again. I mean, you can think of all of this as a bunch of large bubbles. So AI is everything, including many philosophical aspects, and has a long history in various fields that are then bundled into artificial intelligence, trying to make machines in some sense more intelligent at all. Machine learning itself is a more recent discipline, which is often accounted as part of AI, but it's about learning essentially parameters of different kinds of models, of fitting models, the way you reason, how you make decisions basically from the data. So you need data to learn these parameters and then be able to make predictions for new data that you haven't seen yet and get reasonable results. And deep learning indeed is one particular way of machine learning, or one particular form of machine learning, which is using neural nets, essentially a particular technique that propagates weights across different layers of structures, hence deep learning, deep layers, in order to find these decisions or predictions. It's AI itself is extremely broad, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, now there's a question if there's a plan to offer this course as part of a bachelor or master's curriculum. So I think there's no plan yet, so we can't say anything. I guess also right now you might not be able to get recognition for the credits, at least at the University of Luxembourg, that you do for this course.
Yeah, at this point not. Since it's a very basic AI course, we did not really include it into any of the actual university programs that would require essentially decisions made for every particular program, like computer science or different fields. The current mode only foresees like PhD students from different fields to basically get 2 ECTS points for this course, according to the effort that they invest in solving the online course, essentially. But there's no actual inclusion into the normal curricula at the university. We basically offer a lot of related courses, also AI, logic, reasoning, big data, machine learning now. We have a new machine learning professor just hired who's joining soon. Luis Lever is an HCI, human-computer interaction professor, is also a related field who just joined the university. So we're offering essentially our own courses then at the university as well.
Question about the exam. So when you start the exam, do you have to complete it all at once? No. So we will just leave the exam open so that you can just answer some of the questions and then take a break and finish the exam later, as long as it stays between. So before the end date of the exam. So if there's any issue with the AI online course, so you can make a post on the Reddit page. I think we had a couple of technical issues already a bit earlier in the week. Most of them are already solved. There's just one issue where the progress of which exercise you have completed is not being updated, but your exercises are still being recorded. So this is just something we're working on, but it should not impact you, at least for now. We don't have a contact email. You can just send me a private message on the Reddit platform. So I'm one of the moderators. My username is Dr. J. Dauphin. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with us. So now we have the question about AI ethics. So this is covered a little bit in the first chapter, and also in the last one, but it's not. So it's not really a focus of the course. In the last chapter, they talk. So the course talks a little bit about ethics, and I think it mentions this kind of questions. Who to crash into, so these autonomous cars, the famous trolley problem, but the course never goes in details into any of them. Also in the last talk, I think Professor Dovgabai will talk a little bit about also some ethical concerns with AI. You risk missing out on essential information if you do not create a Reddit account. So absolutely not. So like I said, if you just want to read the information that is posted on Reddit, you don't even need to create an account. You just have to go on the page. It's open for everyone. And we'll also send any essential information via the mailing list. So where you also got the announcement about this webinar. So in relation with ethics, they also regulation policy aspects. I think that's a bit too detailed for the goal of this course. I don't think it will go that much in detail into these ethical concerns. So the idea of the course is really more to give people a broad view on what AI is and what it does, and that's a bit too specific for the purpose of this course.
It's really a very high-level course in that sense. If you're interested in specifically in the car crash issue, I can send you a link to the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They have a nice simulator for what would happen during different scenarios, and actually you can see how people vote, what the right decision would be. That's a good link for that. I can put it on Reddit if you like.
Okay. Yes, I think there's some comments about, yes, Martin's picture being upside down. I think, yeah, so that's a technical issue we're also trying to fix, but okay, since it's maybe not
Yes.
too important.
It's not that important for today. Maybe I can fix it later or try again. I don't want to change the settings. Some people actually have it correct, some don't. I don't know what to do. I'm using an iPad and don't know if it's a camera setting or something happens in the browser for me or so, but I don't think it's that important for now.
Okay, there seems to be quite a lot of interest in this MIT link, so we can post the link on Reddit. Maybe you can also start a discussion thread on AI and ethics. Seems quite a lot of people are interested. So someone asked, what is the timing for classes on Mondays? So actually there's nothing special happening on Mondays, just that, so if you signed up on the course on this Monday, then every Monday you basically just get access to the next chapter, but then you can just follow it at your own pace. There's nothing, the only timed event in the week is the weekly webinar on every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m.
Yeah, there's no timing on Mondays or regarding the online course. You only need to complete the current chapter in order to move on to the next chapter, and we need your certificate of that completion once we basically issue your final certificate from the Competence Center as well. So that actually that could be even after the written exam takes place. You send us the completion of the online course, and then everything is complete for your final certificate.
Okay, so I see there's quite a lot of people who are also giving some input to questions of other people. That's very nice. So I encourage you to discuss and really interact with each other on the Reddit platform as much as you can. You can start some discussions if you have. So if any of the topics of the course sparked some ideas or maybe some things you're not sure about, just always feel free to discuss and interact with other people on the Reddit platform. We'll be very happy also to moderate it and give our own input as well. We still have the question, can we do exercises from the first chapter next week? So yes, absolutely. So even if you start, if you start the course late, or if you're a bit behind and you have not yet completed the first chapter, you can always still just do it at your own pace. You might just be a little bit behind with so if you selected the weekly paced version of the course, I'm not entirely sure how that works, but I don't think it's an issue if you want to do the exercises, if you're a little bit behind on some exercises. That's totally fine. Also for the webinars, if you haven't had time to look at the content of the chapter of the week, you can still join for the webinars, of course, and it should not be an issue to understand the talk of the guest. Yes, so every answer that you write on the platform has to be written in English. So there we ask you to make a little bit of an effort. We can also be a bit more lenient, so you know that since it is peer-reviewed, will also be people from Luxembourg who will be reading your answer. And in the worst case, we can still have a look. But please try to make an effort to write in good English, also because the content itself is in English. So I think it makes a bit more sense. Also for the use of technical terms, and it's more in line with the course.
It can be very simple English, of course, and could even be keywords in most cases. That is fine.
Okay, I think we are already at the time to finish the webinar. We answered more or less all of the questions, I believe. So if we somehow missed your question or if we just didn't have time to answer it, again, just feel free to go to Reddit to pose your question. We can answer it also there. And so otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. I think it was very nice. We had many people joining. That's good to see. Wish you a nice rest of the day, and then I will see you next week.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you very much for attending. I think we had 280 people in the webinar today. That's a great number.